Welcome to Books and Looks, where we do a deep dive with authors so you can discover your next great book. And this is a very special day and a special edition of Books and Looks because this is our third annual Christmas wish list. Now, we have had massive, and I do mean massive numbers of new subscribers, new followers, thousands of more people on podcasts. Really, subscribers up 30, 40%. I mean, the numbers are just going out of the roof. So I have to go explain a little bit about the Christmas wish list, okay? First of all, it's that time of year. Everybody you see is going to start putting out a best list, okay? Amazon does it. You see it with Goodreads. They have they have a popularity contest. Vote for this, vote for that for the best of this category, okay? You'll see the big newspapers like the Wall Street Journal, like the New York Times, telling you what are the best books, maybe the best book. You know, over 1 million books are published each year. I'm not vain enough to tell you I've read 1 million books. No, not, not at all. They aren't either, okay? And what happens is they get a lot of different people who read books. They tell them, hey, this is the one I think's very good, and they publish it. Here, I read all the books, cover to cover. Yep, I've read them all. Over this past year, I've gotten over 5,000 books that have been for my pleasure of reading. I have received 1,200 of those from the publishers. Out of those 1,200, I have to whittle those down. Yeah, to what shows up in the podcast. So, I mean, I can't tell you that these are the best of the best, but there's the best books that I've liked the whole year round. And now we're at the third annual Christmas wish list. You want to have a list? You want to have readers in your family? They may make a list. What books would I like or what books should I get? This is what you want to give them. Just listen to the wish list. These are great, great books for you, your spouse, grandma, grandpa, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, children, nieces, nephews, name them. These are books that you know that your family better than I do, obviously, and you know who likes why. These books are going to fit a lot of categories, and I think these are books that I feel would be on my wish list if I was wishing for them this Christmas. So let's begin with the newest genre, which I've never really done before, because it's geopolitics. I know a lot of people go, oh, that's so stuffy. Okay, it can be stuffy. Also can be very educational. And this year, we've got a couple books under the geopolitics, which are just and simply outstanding. I want to begin with Mary Thompson-Jones' book, America in the Arctic. Now, I have a cheat sheet here. I got to tell you, that I can't remember everything off the top of my head, but that is, I asked you to go to video number 107. Okay, YouTube 107. That's America in the Arctic by Mary Thompson-Jones. This is a wonderful book about the Arctic and how it's been changing and how our relationship with the fellow Arctic members has been changing over the years. You know, we've talked about Greenland this year, and there's Iceland, there's Finland, Sweden, Norway, Canada, US, and Russia. And that's it. Don't let them fool you. If it's not those places, it's not in the Arctic. No, no. I think Denmark may be in the Arctic via the Greenland thing. I'm not sure. But don't let them tell you that China's in the Arctic. It's not. It's subarctic, but they want a piece of the Arctic, as does India, Pakistan, the Philippines. What? Why? Well, trade. You know what? Everybody wants to trade across the top because of the Northwest Passage. And the land is getting, more and more melting of ice. And so there's more of a chance to go through. And some countries, oh yes, some countries, we don't want to mention whom, but they start with the letter R and, they want it for military. That's right. They want to have their military up there. Well, this is not a military book. This is really a great book about how we interact with all the different countries up there and what some of the problems are up there. As climate changes, I didn't say climate change, I said climate changes through maybe global warming or whatever, things happen. For instance, did you know that reindeer, this is in this book, reindeer is a major cause of an anthrax infestation. That's right, because the permafrost is starting to melt. And the reindeer start pawing up that permafrost, and it releases anthrax, which make people sick. We got to find a way to, take care of that. We haven't built a new icebreaker in America for 50 years. Why is that? And part of the reason is we don't have any welders, shipbuilders, ship designers, anything. We don't have enough for this. Mary Thompson-Jones goes through all the different countries and explores our relationship with all of them. Everybody hooted and hollered when Donald Trump says he wants to buy Greenland. He's not the first. No, there have been 3 or 4 presidents going back to the Lincoln presidency that have wanted to buy Greenland. Yeah, Woodrow Wilson wanted to buy Greenland. Yep. It's very strategic. And when you realize how little they have up there in terms of defense, you understand why we get concerned when we see those Russian submarines starting to come over. Sweden, by the way, we learned about them, how they went from basically being a country that didn't want anything to do with defense, and now they buy most all their defense supplies from us here in the United States. These are facts and things that Mary has given us about. She teaches at the Naval War College. She's an expert in the field, and this is a book I think anybody who's interested in geopolitics would love this book. Which brings me to my next book, My Russia by Jill Doherty. Now, My Russia is, let's see, that's number 122, okay? That's podcast 122. Jill Doherty, many of you may remember the name. I know a lot of people, when they saw this video, remembered her. She was the Moscow bureau chief for almost 20 years. She was over there reporting. She grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and while there, as a child, she started learning Russia. It was taught in schools in Scranton, Pennsylvania. I grew up 2 hours away. We didn't learn Russian, Spanish and French and German. That's it. But they taught Russian up there. And so she learned this and fell in love with it. She ended up studying over in I think it was Petersburg. Okay. And so she was very fluent. Eventually got a job with the U.S. Information Agency over there. And now she talks about her time in Russia, including the fact that in 2000 and whatever that was at 22, 23, when just before the Ukraine invasion, that was 22, I think, she got a frantic call. You got to go to Russia. They're going to invade the Ukraine. She gets over there. The Russians start laughing at her. What are you here for? We're not invading the Ukraine. What are you talking about? Well, what's this buildup on the border? She's saying. Nothing. Nah, don't worry about it at all. All of a sudden, middle of the night, she gets a call from a Russian compatriot, a journalist, who says, you better get out of Dodge because guess what? They're going in. And so she leaves. And you can't trust these people over there. They're telling A and doing B. And so she tells about her relationship with Vladimir Putin, how she met him before he was anything, really, because she's been there through many, many leaders and prime ministers, Gorbachev, Yeltsin, now Putin. And, Putin was picked to be the successor, and he has grown. Boy, has he grown in that role. I'll tell you what. But she even relates a story where Vladimir Putin kisses her. That's right. Out of the blue at a reception, he comes over and gives her a kiss. That shook the heck out of her. And, why did they do it? And so she relates a lot of stuff about this, things you might not remember. You might remember the Chechen wars, when they were blowing up things and blowing up schools and theaters and stuff like that. Some of the hardest things she's had to report upon. But she's candid. She tells you all about her life. She tells you about life over there in Russia, how things are, how things have changed, how, instead of being a cooperative person, as they all thought they were going to become, with the fall of the Berlin Wall and the fall of communism, things have changed. And all of a sudden, now they're adversarial. You can almost tie that into what's going on with America in the Arctic. Because you know what? Putin has done a lot of putting money into the military, as we all know. But their population shrinks. And so what are you doing for your country? Are you just building up a monster defense industry and nothing else? Well, that's a problem. But anyway, she's there and she relates all her information, all her stories about it. It is really a wonderful, wonderful book. And I would encourage all of you who like memoirs or want to know about geopolitics, this is another book for you. Next, I go to memoirs. Now, memoirs are interesting because not every memoir, touches a person. But some touched me, really did, because I know it's that person's experiences, but I can empathize with them. Maybe I relate with them. And the first one I want to talk to you about is from episode number 130. It was called Leautey's World Run by Marie Leautey. Leautey's World Run is about the woman who ran around the world. That's right, she ran around the world faster than any other woman. Can you imagine that? She ran around the world? Yeah, she did. She would have done it continually had she not kept getting interrupted by COVID problems. But Marie started out at age 29, realized she wanted to run a little bit, was terribly out of shape. By the time she's in her 40s, she decides she's going to try to run around the world. And there is an organization that tracks this. She will become the 7th person to run around the world. Now, I don't know about you, but I know a few people who've trained for a marathon, okay? A marathon. And that's a heck of a thing to do. Heck of an accomplishment. One marathon. Every day that Marie Leautey ran, she ran at least a marathon in distance or longer. Every day, a marathon. Over 700 days, a marathon. Can you imagine this? She had to run through 4 different continents. She ran through Europe, basically twice almost because of the pandemic. She ran through North America. She ran through South America, including going up the Andes Mountains, which is brutal, I'll tell you that. And she ran through Australia and New Zealand. Also, she did this while pushing a baby carriage. That's right, because she sold all her items and took with her what she needed. How is she going to do it? Well, she put it in a baby stroller. Can you imagine this? And she ran this whole time pushing a baby carriage. Yeah. With around 30 pounds or 30 kilos of her clothing, a computer so she could log in her where she is each night. And she ran this entire time. The only injury she had was her hands holding on to the baby carriage. That's it. Nothing else. She had no problems, no injuries. She knew how to self-diagnose any issues. She listened to her body. She never got really sick. Nope. She even ran through a river in Italy because the bridge was out. And it was pouring raining, and she had to get to the other side. And so she ran across, took her shoes and socks off, and ran across with whatever she took first of all, put it over there, runs back across again, goes back the next time, goes back a third time. Ay, ay, ay. And they're marvelous stories about her life, about who she meets. Really wonderful people she met on this. She never really was ever threatened at any time. She ran through all these different countries, all these different continents. And her memoir about this and changing her life and basically saying, you know what, you can do it too. Maybe not running, but put one step in front of the other. Diet today will help you diet tomorrow, which will help you diet the next day, or do something else. Maybe there's something you wish to change in your life. You can do it if you do it one day at a time. And Marie made a remarkable transformation. Just a wonderful story. Stories about being stopped at the border in Australia and having to pay a massive fine because of a dead onion. Yeah, a dead spring onion. Yeah, that's a heck of a story. So lots of stuff that you could like in there. You have a friend who's a runner. You have somebody who is into memoirs. This is a great book for them. Yeah, Leautey's World Run. Oh boy. The next one is The Spinach King. The Spinach King by John Seabrook. Now that's number 128, okay? The Spinach King is the story of the Seabrook family. Now, Seabrook Farms was one of the major industrial agricultural places out there. They became huge. They were right there with Birdseye and all the other guys. They were big. They were in New Jersey. And this is John's basically family history. And it's a fascinating history because a lot of this stuff has been buried or not known until recently. For instance, John's, that would be great-grandfather, came over from England and eventually started a little tract of land. And then it grew and grew and grew. And then John's grandfather basically bought him out and cut him out of the family history. Why? Because John's grandfather wanted to be an aristocrat, wanted to be a plutocrat. And he found out there was another Seabrook branch down in South Carolina, here where I'm at, that was very, very tut and everything else. Plantation owners, boom, 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 boom. So he doesn't talk about his great-grandfather anymore. Matter of fact, we're not even sure where his great-grandfather's buried anymore. It's an amazing story. The grandfather built this thing up, no doubt. And then the son, that's right, John's son bought out his dad and basically, put him out to pasture. But we had things like race riots there in New Jersey, a race riot. I never knew that the Klan was big and that things were happening. But what happened was this farm got so big that during World War II, they went out to the internment camps out west, and they got a deal with the government to have them ship the people in the internment camps to the east to work on the farms that Seabrook owns. And it wasn't much better than being in an internment camp. It was hard work, low-paying work, okay? weren't treated all that well. You were all sort of segregated by race, color, creed, whatever, okay? But the people were out. At least they were not in a behind bars or behind those, what is that? The barbed wire, but so that's how this whole thing began. He was doing something for his father, and he found out about this. It was fascinating, the family that's here. Also, they're the people who are most responsible for cream spinach and lima beans. Yes, I love lima beans. Frozen lima beans, yes. The Seabrooks basically made that a staple on our grocery shelves. And cream spinach made it into 2001: A Space Odyssey. John's father was, again, very, very well connected, especially with the people in Philadelphia, New York. As a matter of fact, was dating Ava Gabor. Yes, Ava Gabor of Green Acres fame everybody thought she was going to be the next Ava Seabrook, but didn't turn out that way. But she was always there. Eventually, he became friends with the Kellys. And when Grace Kelly became, engaged to get married over in Monaco, they asked him to go along because he knew protocol and this is and that's and the wines and everything. This is a fantastic story. So he goes over with Grace Kelly's contingent on the boat. And who does he meet over there? He meets a woman who's reporting for United Press, which turns out to be the woman he marries. She was over there covering this story too. And so we have two really interesting people. And now we have John, and John's got a couple brothers, and this is the story. I mean, his father, John's father, is something else too. He was a coachman. That's right. He had a four-finger coachman. I don't know what it is, but he loved horses, loved coachmen. He'd go take the family out for these picnics on the top hat and tail like he was a British guy or something like that. This is one heck of a story. One heck of a story. And for John Seabrook to want to go back into his family history and expose all the good points and the bad points, well, it's certainly worth reading and listening to. And now, number 136. Wow. This one was just pretty recently. This was Backpack Jacket Surfboard. That's right. My Journey Across America Then and Now by Graham Broyd. I see people have really enjoyed Graham's podcast. The numbers are tremendous. This was a fascinating story about a young man, Graham Broyd, back in 1980, won a scholarship in England to fly to America and study the Panama Canal Treaty at the Library of Congress. He gets his ticket from the university where he got his scholarship, and he decided he wanted to go to see Malibu because that was the surf capital of the world back in 1980. So he sells his ticket, flies to Los Angeles. Now, he's got 6 weeks to get all of this done, okay? He flies to Los Angeles, and now he starts hitchhiking around. He's hitchhiking, and instead of going north to Malibu, he ends up 2-3 hours south in Tijuana. He has no idea how he got there. As a matter of fact, when he went back 40-some years later, he still doesn't know how he got to Tijuana. But he got to Tijuana, the bullfights, the bull rings, and everything that was Tijuana. And then he starts going north. And then he ends up in Yosemite. He has to be backpacking in Yosemite. From Yosemite, he has to go down to Death Valley. He recounts a night he spent camping out in Death Valley. That was a bit of a fiasco. From there, he goes to the Grand Canyon, and he has an encounter with somebody who wants to take him to the house and help him wash his clothes. And so that's a funny story. From there to New Orleans he goes up to New York. By the end, he has got only enough to buy one Big Mac a day to live upon. That's right. The last 6-7 days, all he can eat is one Big Mac. He makes 3 meals out of this one Big Mac. He starts out with the bread course. So he separates everything. He eats his bread first. Then has the salad course. And so he eats the lettuce and the tomato and all that other stuff. And finally, the meat course, the 2 all-beef patties. It took him 45 minutes to eat this stuff, but he had to because all the money he had. But he found wonderful people who helped him, an Australian journalist who helped him get a interview with Howard Baker, who was basically the head and leader of the Panama Canal Treaty. He talked to him. He got a book out. He wrote a book about that eventually. He met some people up in New York who let him live in their apartment while they were somewhere else. It was a wonderful book. It's a wonderful story. And then he went back 44 years later, to retrace that step to see what he's found. you know, and Malibu's still there, you know. He was not a very good surfer, so he didn't go back to try it again, but Malibu was there, and he goes back, he still can't figure out how he got to Tijuana. He goes back, he sees all these places. He only had 24 photos. He had to pack light, and he backpacked. Yeah, like a hitchhiker. He backpacked. He took a smart jacket with him, which got him into Las Vegas and up with Howard Bakel in Washington. But he had that with him, and he had everything he needed in his little backpack. And so it was a rough time going 6 weeks across America with just the backpack. So this is his story in 1980. This is his story in 2024. And it's a wonderful book, and we're very happy to announce that he has 2 more books coming out, I think, on the same thing, and this is great. He found great people. You know what? We make America, we forget how great America is. We read about all the crap that goes on in Washington and everything else. Get past that. Get past the Beltway area. Get down to and out, and you will find wonderful people, remarkable people who go out of their way to help you, treat you nice, tell you where to go, how to get places. He found that in 1980. He found that in 2024. Really worthwhile book. Again, backpack, jacket, surfboard. Historical fiction. Okay. I love historical fiction. Michener is one of my absolute favorite authors here, and it's hard to find good historical fiction nowadays. I go and look at historical fiction books, and it's more historical romance. It's Regency romance. It's bodice rippers. I mean, that's not for me. But last week, we had on one of the best books I have read in a long, long time, The Marquesa by Sarah Dunant. I'm going to tell you what. This is a history. It's a novel. It's a biography. It is an art history book. It is about the first woman of the Italian Renaissance. That's right. She was the first Italian Renaissance woman, Isabella d'Este. Okay. And this is her story, which from age 6 until her death, a remarkable story, which is filled in by the fact that she had written, and they have found 13,000 letters that she wrote during her lifetime in a small, very small, decrepit museum. And then they found another 20,000 letters written to her. It was amazing, the research that went into this about this woman who had such a nose, she became a perfume distiller herself. She became a collector of art. She became a patron of the arts. Art, statuary, whatever. She ran the area where she lived because her husband was off fighting war. And so she was the diplomat. Again, you just can't imagine how this woman did this. At 6 years old, they sent somebody over to interview her. Would she be a suitable wife for somebody? She ended up grilling that emissary on Cicero's one letter, all in Latin. Yeah, that's not a problem, okay? But she had a sense of style. She created a hat, a headdress or something to wear to the Lucretia Borgia wedding. Lucretia Borgia was related to her, and she had to outshine Lucretia. So she made this hat. This hat was so popular that if you look at, for over 50 years, any picture of Italian noble women, matriarchs, marquesas, they all were wearing a hat like this. I mean, she was a trendsetter. She did amazing stuff. And I'm going to tell you what, Sarah Dunant is wonderful. She's written 6 novels, historical fiction novels about women from the Italian Renaissance. This is the latest one. It may be her best. There are wonderful books I really recommend. You like historical fiction? I mean, the comments we've gotten within the first few hours of this podcast even being put up are outstanding. People love this. They want to meet both Sarah and they want to meet Isabel d'Este through the pages of the book. Yep. Great book. Wonderful read. Again, The Marquesa by Sarah Dunant. That is episode number 137. Biography is next. That's right. You got to have a few biographies in here. And oh boy, did we start the year off with a winner. Episode 103, Sister Sinner by Claire Hoffman. This is the story of Aimee Semple McPherson. Wow. Now, if you've never heard of Aimee Semple McPherson, she was a Pentecostal preacher. She was born in Canada, grew up there for a little bit, moved down to New York with her mother. was a child basically of the Salvation Army because her mother worked there, and eventually start becoming a preacher. And she eventually worked her way across America. Now, we've heard so much about the Roaring '20s, the Roaring '20s this, the Roaring '20s that. Not everybody was roaring, friends. Not everybody was roaring, especially in the second half of the '20s. There was a real, huge Pentecostal movement coming across America at that time. People were realizing there's more to life than drinking and partying and carousing. And Amy Semple McPherson, she was a wonderful preacher. And by the time she got out to California, she had millions of followers. She had a list, a mailing list, so she sent things out to them. She had her own radio station, so she could do radio shows. She built her own church out there. There's still the denomination. The Foursquare Church is still a denomination. I think they have 8 million members worldwide. This is the story of Amy Semple McPherson, which is on this, again, this sort of Greek tragedy because it's going up, 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 up. And then one day at Venice Beach, she disappears. And now the whole story goes down. That's right. For 30 days, they couldn't find her. They were sure she was lost. 20, 30, 40,000 people would show up on Venice Beach to pray, to see if they could find something with Amy. Where was she? Had she drowned? Where was she? What could have happened? Was she kidnapped? Who knows? But around 30 days later, lo and behold, she appears. Where? In Mexico. In Mexico. Yep, in Mexico. And tells this amazing story about how she was kidnapped and how she was taken to the desert and how she was kept in this tiny little shack. And then eventually she made her way out and made it to a police station, and she's back in America. And unfortunately, this had such huge publicity that now everybody wants to check out her story. And after the first couple days of, oh, thank God Amy's back, it's like, something's not working out here. Something's not right. And, Claire Hoffman tells us all about the search for where was Amy Semple McPherson and what was the story. Did she go on a vacation because she was completely exhausted? Or was it a lover's tryst? It's a very popular idea. But ever from that point on, her sermons changed. She became more spiteful, more angry, because the government actually ends up bringing criminal charges against her and suing her because of all the money they expended trying to find her. And if this was a hoax, well, you better pay it back, because we're not going to spend all our time, effort, and energy trying to find somebody who deliberately ran away. Very interesting. So Amy Semple McPherson, again, an amazing story from top to bottom, from beginning to end. It's an amazing life she had. I'll tell you what, this is a great biography, okay? And I really, if you're interested in this sort of things, and as I am, I love this stuff. And I love that era of the '20s. The fact it's not the Roaring '20s. I don't want to hear about Gatsby anymore, okay? There are other people besides Jay Gatsby, okay? I want to hear about this other side of America. And that's what you're going to read here. You can't go wrong with that. Okay, number 125, probably the most popular talked about show we have had, book we've had this year, The Story of ABBA. That's right, The Story of ABBA by Jan Grodvall. Jan is a Swedish journalist, and he has had exclusive interviews with all members of ABBA, okay? And I'm going to tell you why. He has written a story about them, and we're not going to hear all the gory stuff, who's doing this with what and how's it happening, but he tells background about this group, where they came from. For instance, there's one person who's not naturally Swedish, and that was Anna Fried, the brunette, okay? She was not Swedish. There was only one person who could read music. And as a matter of fact, they think to this day she may be the only person who could read music. That's right. It was Agnetha. She's the only one who was trained. She was a trained pianist. She could read music. Matter of fact, when she sang, she felt she got better vocal range in the recording studio when she was laying down. Yeah. We hear about Benny and Bjorn and the groups they started out with, the Hep Cat, the Hep Boys, and the Hootenanny Singers. I mean, it's just amazing. Bjorn was the guitar. Benny, he could play the accordion. Yeah, he loved to play the accordion. And so we hear all these interesting facts about ABBA. And it's filled in a lot of the blanks about where they came from, how did they get where they were. the fact that they actually were entered in Eurovision in 1973 and didn't make it. They were going to go back in 1974. They did go back, and they changed their song. Okay. They went from, I think it was Please Please, to Waterloo. And Waterloo was a winner. Waterloo made them. It won Eurovision. Oh, it got the Brits upset because it was too rock and roll. And, only the Brits can do rock and roll, Well, on that, But ABBA changed the course of music history and are probably more popular today than they were back then. It's amazing. Through the ABBA Museum, through the plays, the musical, the TV, the movies, I should say. It's just out of this world. And there are now movies about ABBA. I just was watching one the other day on, was that on Netflix? Yeah, it's the story of ABBA. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. And the schedule was crazy. It was every day they were doing something. You had Agnetha, who had children. Okay. How did that go? How did she handle having children? Because Annie Fried had a child also. How did their relationships happen? We don't get into all the stuff about how the breakups were, but they broke up eventually. But, it was an amazing time. This was an amazing group, and they just had so many hits, and only one number one hit. Only one of their songs ever went to number one here in the U.S., but everywhere else, they were top of the charts. And so we follow them, and we follow these people. I mean, the British, at the beginning, the Swedish music critics didn't like them. No, that wasn't the music of the folk music. See, at the time, the Swedes were into folk music. That's why the Hepcats and the Hootenanny singers, that's why they were big, because, that was traditional, accordions, folk music. This was a break. Didn't like that. They came around. Don't worry. Now, what I want to do is you got to follow me on this, friends. After they broke up, Benny and Bjorn kept working on music. As a matter of fact, they wrote a play called Chess. Okay. It made it on the West End, in London. And there's a song from that called One Night in Bangkok. Now, I'm going to talk to my producer, Nathaniel, and we're going to get a music video for you of that on the YouTube, okay? We're going to get the Murray Head music video of One Night in Bangkok, because I want you to see what type of music they evolved into and what they could do, not just all the type of ABBA music, but how they evolved. It's a wonderful video. I'll be very honest with you. And so I think you're going to like that, to see the contrast between ABBA and what they're doing. Okay? They're all old now. When did ABBA get old? I can't believe that. It's the story of ABBA. It is a wonderful, wonderful book. Everybody who's read it just raves about it. So I think you're going to like it. I want to have it under your Christmas tree. Now, this next one, biography. I didn't know where to put this next one, so I decided to put it under biography. When in doubt, go there. Episode number 111. The book is called Starlings. That's right, Starlings by Mike Stark. We've got a book about birds. I didn't know where to put it, but it's really telling us all about the story about the starling here in America. Okay, it's a biography. So this Mike Stark has done an outstanding job. You know what? We got more YouTube viewers and podcast listeners to this episode than any other episode in 2025. Yep, it's the leading one. People love the starlings. This is a bird that was native to Europe. And as people emigrated from Europe to America, they missed songbirds and they missed the starling. So there's this one gentleman who decides he's going to introduce starlings into America. And the first 3-4 years, I got to be honest with you, he brought them over. They all died. But then the next year, he brought 100 over, and around 20 made it. Okay. They ended up, there's over 100 million of them now in America. They are all over. They are by far the most despised and hated birds in America because they're loud. They poop all over. I mean, they've interrupted presidential inaugurations. They are everywhere in cities and farms. They eat everything they can find. They drive off native species, and yet they survive. Doesn't matter. Climate doesn't matter. Elevation doesn't matter. They're from north to south, east to west. They're here now. And so intelligent. Again, I'm got to talk to my producer again, Nathaniel. I've got a wonderful, around 2-minute video of a starling talking one morning. Talking. It talks. the starling can talk. And then you would swear to God you're watching Star Wars because it sounds like it's making R2-D2 sounds. And it can mimic anything. This is one of the most intelligent birds in the world. We have spent millions and millions of dollars trying to eradicate this bird, and it won't die away. It got to the point where people were putting up dirty diapers to keep them out of the trees. And it's just something else. But this is just a fascinating book. Their flying pattern, which they call murmurations, zoom, 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 back and forth. They don't hit each other. Just somehow they have this osmosis process of knowing where the other one's going. They follow them around. I tell you what, I have a new appreciation for starlings. I'm going to tell you what, they're an amazing bird. I'm glad we don't have any here where I live, okay, because they would have taken over by now. So I'm glad they're somewhere else. But I'll tell you what, this was a great book. I thought it might be dull, book on birds. Guess what? It wasn't. It was really, really fun. It was a really great read. Starlings by Mike Stark. Okay, nonfiction. Now, I know there's a lot of you who like nonfiction, and we're going all over the world on this one. We're starting out with episode 105, Custodians of Wonder by Elliot Stein. Now, Custodians of Wonder by Elliot Stein is about traditions or customs in locations that are starting to go extinct because people don't do them anymore. They slowly disappear. People don't have the patience, don't want to do it. And so he goes through chapter by chapter different places where traditions are starting to fall apart. One of the most amazing ones, I got to tell you this, is down in the Incas. There's an Incan bridge maker, okay? This gentleman every year uses grass to make grass-woven bridges across the gorges, okay? He makes one every year. So every year he starts out, and within a year, the old one is ready to be, to go. So he starts with this thing, and he winds these grass threads, and then he has to weave himself across the canyon there to get to the other side. Nobody wants to do this. Now, you're crazy. They've been doing it in his family for years and years. He's the last guy doing it. He would like to have his son do it. His son's he's not going to do that at all. So he's trying to find another person to help weave grass bridges. And can't find anybody. How about, this is a good one. One of the longest democratically elected positions in Cuba. That's right, democratically elected. Is the Cuban cigar factory readers. Yeah. Apparently, the cigar factory, the workers there, get bored just sitting there, doing the cigars. So they elect, they have an election to choose who should be reading them books. And so this has been going on, and they now have this one lady who reads them books or newspapers. Very controversial, because before Castro came in, the government didn't want them to write or read certain things. Okay, you shouldn't read anything that might be subversive. Then Castro comes in, he doesn't want anything the other way. But despite that, these Cuban cigar workers, they keep having their person read them the books. And that's what she does. She reads to them every day. No one wants to do that anymore. And again, as books get, books get in there anymore. There's no papers hardly anymore. So that position may be going the way of the dodo, unfortunately. How about the most unique pasta in the world? Made in Sardinia by this one woman and her sister. It is the thinnest pasta. It's like it's like the width of a piece of thread. I mean, the people from Barilla Pasta went there to try to see if they can do it. They gave up after 2 weeks. Couldn't do it. We cannot replicate it. But they make this twice a year for feast days in the middle of the country of Sardinia. And it takes like 7 hours to make each, and they weave it, they thread it, they have to put it over a barrel or something or in the middle. And then it dries out there. I mean, it's just utterly amazing. And people come from all over. All the Sardinia comes for this pasta. It's never been seen anyway. It's utterly the most amazing thing in the world. There's the only two people left, these two women making this pasta. And when you understand, you read how difficult it is, you understand why nobody else wants to do it anymore. How about the last of the Taiwan movie poster painters? Okay, back in the day, they didn't have movie posters. So they had a gentleman who painted scenes from the movies. And so that was great until now things are getting different. and he's the last one painting anymore. Fascinating. He's almost going blind from the oil paints he's used, but he paints these on at the second run theaters or the people that show retrospectives, older movies. He paints this. He's the last person to do this. People marvel at him. It'll take him, days to do a poster, and that he watches the movie, then he paints something from it. No one else wants to do it anymore. And when he dies, it's probably going to be dying out. And then there's the Scandinavian Night Watchman. Again, this is a family thing too. The last guy who goes up in the mountains there, goes up to the temple, I should say, of the temple, the church, and stands up there at nighttime and watches out to see what's going on. Says anybody can see the whole area? Are there fires? Are there robberies, ambulances? What's happening? He is the last of the night watchmen up there. It gets cold up there, to be very honest with you. It gets very cold up there. And nobody wants to really do this anymore. And he's the last one. I mean, the gentleman who wrote the book, Eliot, followed him up into the steeple, which itself is a hazard to do, and eventually tells us all about this gentleman and his family. Yep. Custodians of Wonder. You can read this one chapter at a time. Very simple read. Or learn a lot about things. Amazing what happened and what people do in the other countries that are their traditions and their customs, and which are unfortunately going the way of the dodo. Now I got to go to David Krell. David Krell is show number 119. Okay. This is Baseball in America. Oh, excuse me. The official title, 1978. Baseball in America in the Disco Era. That's right. We're going back to 1978. And David Krell, a well-respected writer, a gentleman who I knew, I met up at Cooperstown one time. David has given us a month by month what went on in 1978, both in baseball as well as in the world of culture. And boy, is this fascinating, because we see what happens with, for those of you who might not know baseball, you might not know some of these names, but Bowie Kuhn was a commissioner, and he negated almost every trade or deal that Charlie Finley tried to do with the Oakland A's under what he called the best interest of baseball. He won't let you trade this person. You didn't get enough back for that person. They didn't like each other, and so he kept vetoing trades. That started in January. We see Tommy Lasorda, not one of my favorites, okay, but Lasorda, who through his sheer will hated everybody basically, other than his beloved Dodgers, and he willed them to beat Sparky Anderson's Cincinnati Reds. We hear about that. We hear about clubhouse fights. We hear about the Yankees coming back from way down, miracle finishes, and eventually winning the World Series. Fantastic. And then you've got culture. See, it's not all baseball. It's culture. Because, back in April, this show debuted. It was like a 6-part little mini-series. The critics panned it. They said, this is terrible. Worst show maybe ever on television. Never going to make it. That was in April. It ended up being on the fall calendar. Why? Dallas. That's right. Dallas debuts as a little miniseries, 6-part miniseries in April of 1978. Critics got that wrong. Yep. Back in February of 1978, there was a huge snowstorm, a blizzard in the Northeast, which crippled that area. What did you do? You stayed at home. You couldn't do anything. There was no internet. You just, what happens? It was during that time period that the world was introduced to Robin Williams. That's right. Robin Williams makes his infamous Mork appearance, Mork from Ork, on the Happy Days show, which eventually leads him into his shows. And then his career just zooms up from then. But that all happened in 1978. There also was disco. That's correct. We had disco. All right. We had anything that the Bee Gees did. The movie came out in 77, Saturday Night Fever. But the soundtrack comes on. All of 1978 was the base of the Bee Gees soundtrack. Either they sang it, they recorded it, somebody else was recording their music. It was out there, including the world's worst Disco Duck. Terrible song by Rick Dees, but people loved it. Anyway, disco. It was everywhere. It was Gloria Gaynor. It was Donna Summers. There was, great music, fun music, but it became so problematic. It became so oversaturated that by next year, in 1979, they had Death to Disco Night in Comiskey Stadium in Chicago, which was that was some night where they blew up disco records. So 1978, baseball in America in the disco era. You don't want to miss that one. That's a lot of fun. Now, let's see. I got 2 left, okay? I'm sorry this is going a little bit longer, everybody. I got 2 books left. One of the most compulsively readable books that I've had this year is a mystery book by Cindy Fozzie. Episode 133 is called Danger, No Problem. Or as I say, Danger, No Problem. It, it features Domingo the Bounty Hunter. That's right. How many bounty hunter books do you know out there? Yeah, not many. Not many. But here, this is just, like I said, compulsively readable. Wow. I'm going to tell you what. Cindy Fozzie is a Filipino-American citizen. She writes about Domingo, who is also her character is a Filipino-American citizen. He is a bounty hunter. He is one of the best out there. He brings people who've overstayed their welcome, overstayed their visas, and takes them back to the deportation facilities. Okay. She started this book in 1995. Can you imagine that? 30 years later, it's being published. 30 years of different points of view she had to go. She started the whole book, had it written, not the best point of view. Let's write it through Domingo's point of view. So you do that. Then didn't happen then. Then things changed. 10 years later, one thing's happened. He brings another story. Because it's a story how Domingo, while he's very good, there's one person, Monica Reed. Domingo, that's his kryptonite. He can't get her. In 1995, she comes over from the Philippines. She's a Philippine-American lineage. She comes to find her father. And the father finds out about this and wants her get her out of here. Well, Domingo eventually loses track of her. Then we follow that story 10 years later, when all of a sudden the father now wants her back in the life. So we follow for that, and that turns into a fiasco. And then another 10 years later, we follow this girl, Monica, and now I guess would be her stepmother. Now she wants to have her back in the life because she feels crappy about the way her husband treated her. Well, that didn't end good either. I mean, this is just an amazing story about this gentleman and tracking down people and tracking down Monica and that story that they had. It is a well-written story. And in between, during his free time, Domingo is writing a book on ways for immigrants to stay in America and become citizens. That's right. Because you might be reading a chapter or two, and all of a sudden, wait a minute, what is this? And it goes, the print changes, and it's Domingo writing his book for other people. What you need to do. It's wonderful. I mean, it's absolutely an amazing page-turning book. Her next one came out the exact same day, called Sunday or the Highway. That comes out the exact same day as Danger, No Problem. I'm going to tell you what, neither book took me 2 days to read. I was done in a day and a half. These are just compulsively readable books. Cindy Fozzie has done a wonderful job. If you're somebody who likes mysteries, police procedurals, bounty hunter books, this is the book you want to get. And last but not least, and I mean it's not least, the last book I'm talking about today is episode 123. The book is called Ivory Bones, The Lewis Chessman Murders by Sarah Winokur, who is a molecular geneticist, but she's writing a book. That's right. She writes this book about the Lewis Chessman Murders, Ivory Bones. This is fantastic. Did you know that the Barbary pirates were up in Iceland? They were up there, and they took prisoners. And these Lewis chessmen, this is a true story about these chessmen. They're little chess pieces, okay, that were carved out of whale ivory around 1200, 1300 AD. Yeah. And this is a chess set. That's why they call it chessmen. And so this woman who is being kidnapped grabs a hold of some of this stuff, and she's being kidnapped by the Barbary pirates. The ship goes aground, and it ends up in Scotland. That's why it's called the Lewis, because it ends up on Lewis Island in Scotland. Well, this is the whole background of the whole thing, because there's murders in Iceland. Oh, yes. Because someone wants these chess pieces. Because one chess piece, one of these they're little, like 2 inches high. They're worth $1 million each one. So somebody is trying to connect them. There end up being 2, 3 murders, friend against friend, companions against companions. This is really fascinating book, well-researched, gets some of the DNA into the whole stuff. I mean, this is a book where I read so much because one of these chess pieces allegedly ends up in New York, which brings the New York people over to Iceland. I mean, this was well done, really well done. Again, it's my type of book. because you know what? I learned something. I really learned something from some of these mysteries or thrillers. And then I learned so much from this. It is a book I think you're going to want to read. The Lewis Chessman Murders. Yeah, it's called Ivory Bones by Sarah Winokur. And there it is, friends. My baker's dozen. That's right. The Christmas wish list of 2025, the third annual list. You know, I can't tell you which is the best. I can't tell you which is the tops in any category. I can only tell you that if I got any one of these three under my Christmas tree or given to me as a present, I would be ecstatic because they are wonderful books by wonderful people who do wonderful work. They really are, friends. And you know what? You can't beat this stuff. And if you know me and you've been following me, you know I try to get what I like to say, real books for real people. Okay. I'm not going to give you something you need to interpret this and that. No. I'm going to give you something which is really down to earth, which is going to learn something and you're going to have a good time doing it. So anyway, on behalf of our good friends at booktrib.com, this is Blaine DeSantis for Books and Looks, saying may all your leaves be pages in a book.